Welcome to the Seeing Double podcast, hosted by gymowners.com. We're your hosts. I'm Amy Davis.
And I'm Patty Davis.
We're two identical twins with completely different lives. We'll be sharing double the perspective of any topic we dive into.
All right, guys, let's jump in.
So let's dive into our experiences with health and fitness. I feel like we have totally shaped our lives around health and fitness and been through so many different pieces along our journey to bring us to where we're at now. And that's kind of what I want to dive into. It's mostly where we've been and where we're at now and even where we're headed. And this is definitely an area where we may not be fully identical too. Like that's hard to believe,
absolutely.
but yes, we were shaped in the exact same way. We have the exact same background and history with gymnastics that we'll definitely dive into, but where we're at now and where we're headed may not be fully identical. And we also haven't fully talked through this, so I'm interested to see what you have to say.
I am also.
So let's kick off with gymnastics. So we started gymnastics at a young age, let's say, I think 3 or 4 years old.
It was 3. And we got competitive quickly, so it just seems like one day we were just like messing around, and next thing you know, we were going to gymnastics meets on the weekend. We were going to 4 or 5 hour practices, even at a young age. I mean, that really, one, kept us out of trouble. Love that. But also just shaped us into who we are. It seems like that also impacts the workouts that we did the rest of our life, whether it was through running, whether it was through triathlons, whether it was you competing, even just normal gym workouts. It always has a little agile experience. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So thinking back on our gymnastics days, I feel like, first of all, the biggest takeaway was routine. Outside of the actual routines that we were competing, it was also the gymnastics was engraved in our lives. Like we were so used to every single day after school, getting picked up by our dad, having lunch quick in his car, changing into our leotards, and going to practice 30 minutes later. Like we were so used to having that right after school, and we were
getting home at 9:30 afterwards.
Yeah, and then having a 4 or 5 hour practice, getting home late, having dinner late, somehow studying and getting school stuff ready. Like once we got to older ages, like high school and stuff, that was like our routine, and it really, I think, engraved in us that we do live by routines, because I still do to this day, even though I don't have 4 or 5 hour gymnastics practices. Like it's still like engraved in me that I live through a routine, and I have a routine with my day to day. So I think that's one big takeaway we took from gymnastics. Obviously strength, we took away huge things in the aspect of strength.
Yeah, it was a healthy time in our lives though, because our coaches were just so smart. I mean, we had good, solid coaches where a lot of people don't have that relationship with their coach, and they helped us condition. They taught us really conditioning and what we can do with our bodies, and just starting with injuries, which we don't have to go super deep in on. We had some tough injuries and we overcame them. Weirdly enough, we overcame them together. But think of the things we did while we were injured. I mean,
yeah. The first injury we fully dealt with together was breaking our ankles at the same time. Yeah. And just to say from the beginning, we are mirror image twins. So Patty was a righty, I was a lefty. And in all of our injuries, that was apparent. Like, I think it was your left ankle that you broke, my right ankle that I broke. And we were always dealing with these injuries and overcoming these injuries together. We were still in the gym with casts on our ankles, with no weight being put on our foot, conditioning for 4 hours when we couldn't train fully. Yep. And I remember like during that time, that was really when I became most aware of the strength that your body can have, because we had kind of maybe taken it for, what's the word?
Granted.
Maybe taken it for granted, the fact that our bodies were so strong. We could do so many huge skills in gymnastics, but like pull-ups and stuff like that, that was so easy for us that we weren't even aware of the strength that your body required to do that. So when we dealt with these ankle injuries, first and foremost, like we were so strong in terms of upper body. We were able to hold handstands as long as we wanted with our cast up in the air. We were able to step down and like balance on one foot whenever need be. And through these injuries is when we really, I think, transitioned into like what our body's potential was. Yeah. So then the next injury we dealt with together was our shoulders. Mine was left. I had left shoulder surgery, and you had right shoulder surgery. Yeah. So we tore our bicep and our labrum at the same time, had the exact same surgery. Again, we were still conditioning. Yeah. That
so
time,
bad.
though, we had all lower body to work with. We could still do almost all things lower body. We were like, had to be careful about jumping and like jarring movements. But when we were dealing with these shoulder injuries, that was what actually brought us to our next phase of fitness. And that was running. I remember once we were able to start moving, we started running and we literally never looked back.
I remember in high school, couldn't tell you what grade because memory just isn't there, but we were taking tests at school and I still had my shoulder brace on. So we couldn't move our arms for like, let's just say 7-8 weeks, I think it was. I couldn't write at school. So I would just like type with one hand, I think is what I did for test. I would go to gymnastics afterwards, or I would go to mom's neighborhood afterwards and just run for like 45 minutes. I'm like, I can't even do a test at school. And instead I'm just running. Like it is what I turned to. And I think you did the same because we needed to be able to do something.
Our bodies were so conditioned to need that exercise and to want that exercise that really just the format of exercise or the form of exercise, that's what changed when we dealt with these injuries and progressed into our journey. So I remember even before we could run, like right after shoulder surgeries, fresh after shoulder surgeries, we weren't allowed to do anything jarring. Mom bought us an elliptical, remember? Because that was the only thing we were allowed to do. We could walk, but that wouldn't do much for us. So we started the elliptical.
We just went in the basement and did the elliptical.
For hours. We would take turns. We were watching Friday Night Lights TV show and we would be on the elliptical for hours with our arm in the huge cast in front of us.
Yeah.
And then we transitioned into running. That is what our next phase of our life really was. Yes. And when we finally like realized that gymnastics was over and we weren't going to compete anymore, like we needed something. Yeah, but we needed something to compete in. We needed something to set as a goal for ourselves. So we turned to running and we have ran a lot in our days. Like I am just getting back into running now, which we'll talk about, but think about how much we used to run. We went on long runs.
I used to, part of the reason that I'm afraid of so many things these days, which we don't, Amy hates when I talk about this stuff, but I'm afraid of like men. I'm afraid of crossing the street by myself, like all these things. Because when I was running on the treadmill during the winters, I would watch Law and Order. And Amy, I watched 5 seasons of Law and Order in one winter, just because I spent so many hours on the treadmill. We probably ran 50 to 100 miles
a week.
In a week. Yeah.
Yeah. So that then progressed into distance running and actual competitive distance running. Yeah. So if I were to think through some numbers in my head, I don't think we've run 10 full marathons. I think we're at like 8 or 9 full marathons. And then the stepping stone to that would be half marathon, which we've ran maybe a dozen. Yeah. And we used to just sign up for these for fun. Like I'm telling you, we would be on vacations in Arizona, Florida, so you name it. We would find a competition or a race near us and sign up like a couple days later. And that's like one thing that we are just so spontaneous at. Like even to this day, I would consider myself like I would run a marathon this weekend if I could. But anyways, like we just used to do that. And it was like from that base of gymnastics that we had, we were so used to having that goal in mind and like having that next thing that we had to tackle. And so that's when we turned to running and long distance races. And I told this story at your wedding, but think back to the race we ran in Arizona one time. It was actually a triathlon.
Yeah.
And we usually would run together. We would always run together. We would cross the finish line together. We would take on the whole race at the same speed together, except for this one race in Scottsdale, Arizona.
So dumb. Literally hate this story.
First of all, it was a triathlon. We swam in a pool because there wasn't freshwater lake around us.
We're in Arizona. Yeah.
So we're in a pool, swimming so many laps back and forth, get on the bike. We're on the bike together, start the run together, of course, until we're like,
Amy decides she has to win.
20 yards out from the finish line. And I remember, I don't actually know what took over me, but something took over me. And I'm like, no, I have a little bit left in me. I can beat her here. And I think I shoved you. I think I gave you a little elbow and I finished that race before you. And it was like, definitely my biggest regret to this day between us. Like, I still feel so horrible about that. And I crossed the finish line like just a few seconds before her. And I don't know what I was thinking.
We always did things together. And then it felt like it was like, I felt like I did something wrong. I'm like, what did I do to be pushed out of the way? And you did win. Obviously, that's what she wanted.
So anyways, then we kept running through our lives. Literally to this day, we still run. But
yes,
what I think happened next, like, wasn't the prettiest. I think after we got into running, and into like long distance training and like excessive training, like even more than gymnastics was on our bodies, we started to get skinny for the first time. Before that, we had some strength to us. Yeah. And I think that we really liked the idea of being skinny. And like, it's not pretty, but I remember wanting to be skinnier. And it's like very unhealthy to look back on. And it's cool to see that we've grown from that stage. But I remember like for the first time ever liking being skinny and wanting to be skinny and not strong. I didn't see it as strength like I had in gymnastics. So
after that period in my life, I've never been muscular again because I just starved my body. And I'd be like sore for 5 days after doing something where usually I would recover so quickly, but I just wasn't letting myself eat those things that I needed. We were just like freaking burning thousands of calories and just eating Wheat Thins. Like, you can't do that.
You loved Wheat Thins. Oh my God, that was like all you would eat.
I know. I would eat Wheat Thins for dinner.
Yeah. We were unhealthy, that's for sure. Like, we also weren't even feeding our body the nutrients that it needed while we were doing that distance training. And I also remember at this age, we were able to drive ourselves. We were able to go to grocery stores by ourselves. I remember buying those sketchy fat burning pills and taking them like frequently because I wanted to be skinny. Like, yes, I still put the work in. Yes, I was still running and possibly getting into some body weight exercises too through this time. But like, definitely for the goal of weight loss and being skinny. And we didn't need that. We've always like been in shape. But I just remember like during this phase of our lives, I didn't like care about strength anymore. I had moved instead towards only appearance. It was high school, probably going into college as well, like just liking the idea of being skinny. And it was like something that we've learned from. And I think I hope I will never, ever fall back into that trap again.
Something that I do want to do on this podcast is Amy has a good friend that's a doctor. And there might be people who look up to us or for whatever reason are connecting with us on this and still might be struggling with this. So I think maybe having the doctor, sorry, his name is Jason. I believe he's a doctor. But if he came on, I think we could talk about what makes you feel this way. Maybe there's ways you can break this habit. Maybe there's ways you can get out of it yourself. It's so
apparent. Yeah. We are honestly lucky that we have overcome it. And honestly, let's be truthful.
Still have some bad days.
We have some bad days. Before your wedding, you wanted to starve yourself. I'm just going to say that. You wanted to be a little bit skinnier. So remember, you needed to have fit into your dress. Yeah.
And that's so common. Yeah. Which is horrible.
It is horrible. So getting out of our heads there. And that will definitely be something we can dive into further. But from that, I actually took like complete 180 though, because when I started dating AJ, I was still running. He definitely was dating me through my running phases and through my racing phases. But he was a strength trainer. He lifted weights. He is very, very, very strong and has all sorts of muscle. And I remember wanting that for the first time. That was the first time ever that I was like, okay, let's put on muscle.
Because you see someone else doing it well and it impacting their life in a positive way.
Yeah, and I was going to the gym with him. And at first I would just like stay on the treadmill while he would go lift. And it's like, maybe I do want to put on some muscle. And I actually consider this phase of my life meathead. I think that's the term that people use in the gym. I put on muscle. No, Patty, I was there, I know. Yeah, okay. So I put on a lot of muscle. I had some curves that I literally don't have anymore and had never had in my life. And it was all because of strategic eating and strategic training. And that is what I wanted. So in that time, that was when I added fit to my Instagram name. And now I don't think I deserve that fit in there anymore because I'm not nearly as active and as regimented as I was then. But I competed. I trained for a bodybuilding competition. I got up on stage with my curves and with my muscle that I put on. And I remember like this being the next step of my fitness journey. We had gone from gymnastics. We had gone from distance running. I was now competing and I loved it. It was like my next thing that I wanted to tackle. Mm-hmm. And what were you doing during this time? I'm trying to think back. You did not love the idea of competing. You didn't.
I was literally walking. I used to go for walks for 2 hours. Do you not remember?
I remember. This was COVID. It was during COVID.
You were like, you really need to start not lifting, but you did tell me like you need to eat more protein because I do. And you also kept saying you need to incorporate a little bit of weights. And so I tried, but I just never...
You still need to, yeah.
I mean, maybe everybody's different. So like I've been doing more Pilates lately. Feels like it's like a good workout for me because I'm getting older. Maybe I want to have kids. It's good for like low impact where you can still afford to like do those things, build your body. Everyone's always said there's like a good healthy balance between those things, but how do you do those things when like one is just like building your muscles and the other one's lengthening? And like
I completely agree. I think the same thing, and I think that's where I'm at now, is trying to find that balance where I love all the things we've just listed. Love gymnastics. You love gymnastics more. You can still go tumble whenever you want.
Oh yeah.
But like I love still being able to do things gymnastics wise. Like I could still tumble if I want to. We can still hold handstands whenever we want to. So a balance between gymnastics, between running. You and I still have a love for running. Every single time we're together, we go on at least one run together and get back into that. And lifting weights. And it's just crazy to me because these things, they kind of all contradict each other. And it's so difficult.
My body is like, what do you want me to do?
Yeah. Like one day we're like, okay, let's go on a 10-mile run and prove to ourselves that we can still run 10 miles. And then the next day it's like, okay, let's go lift some weights. And your body's like, you want to do what after you're still recovering from this? Like, it leaves your body confused. So there is like a fine balance between each of these things. And a huge part of this is recovery. That's what needs to come into play, especially for you. I'm going to call you out. You already said it because I tell you all the time, but you need to eat more protein. I could also be way better in this area. So maybe I'm just reminding myself, but
we have different lifestyles though. Whereas Matt and I haven't lived in the same place for more than a month and a half, 2 months, 3 months. When you're constantly in hotels and going to different kickings, Matt and I do our best. But it takes me so long to recover that I know.
But it can still be your priority.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we're older now. You said it. We get sore like we haven't before. We deal with aches and pains. I wake up in the morning, I'm like, I'm only 25 years old. I should not be feeling this in my back. I work from home. I should not be feeling this, while I'm sitting at my desk during the day and I'm just aching. I'm like, is something wrong with me? But the answer is no. Maybe something is wrong with me, but the answer is we need to achieve balance. That's what you and I both should be working towards. So I do think that, like you said, bringing on a doctor, my friend Jason here would be great to talk to. And we could help talk with our audience on achieving this level of balance, because I do think there are a lot of people that have this as their end goal. We went through all the other phases of our journey, through gymnastics competitions as the goal, through races as our goal, but like to have balance as a goal, like that's huge for us to accomplish together.
Yes. And to get out of the bad habit of needing to feel skinny. And like, I just remember even the morning of my wedding, we wanted to go running at 6 a.m. Do you remember? Like that was the worst idea. Why did we want to do that? Instead, we should say, I want to feel good in the morning. And then like when you wake up, what would make me feel good? It's probably not running 15 miles, but if it is, good for you.
I feel like this is an awesome start for us in where we've been in our health and fitness journey, where we're at now and where we're headed. Maybe we didn't dive into full details in each of these areas, and we can in the future, but I think it's just great to call out that our audience will be dealing with a lot of the things we've dealt with in the past, are dealing with now, and will deal with in the future, and that we can all come together in this area.
Yes. So that was a little bit of an explanation of our fitness journey, and we can't wait to see you on the next episode of Seeing Double in Unfiltered Twin Talk.
Until next time, bye.